As the global economy continues to crater because of the reckless ignorance and stupidity of one man, as life for undocumented workers and migrants in this country becomes increasingly untenable and dangerous, as prices go through the roof and inflation gets to the point where it's about to rage out of control, it's very important to remind ourselves of one thing. The Republicans in Congress could put a stop to this at any minute, but they're choosing not to. So it's worth considering perhaps why. A lot of them are stupid. That's true. A lot of them are sycophants and just are there to follow because, like more than 30% of Americans, they clearly have authoritarian personalities. Some of them are true believers. I think all of them are fascists. But there's something else going on here, too. I think the bottom line is that in addition to being fascist and racist and misogynist, they're just misanthropes. They hate people. They actually hate their fellow human beings, whom they consider to be beneath them and perhaps even beneath contempt. So we're here where we are because of Republicans in Congress who refuse to do their jobs or just have decided that it's not their job anymore to work for the American people or to protect our democracy because they don't believe in democracy either. So yes, at some point we are going to have that reckoning with what we did wrong, what led up to this, but now is not the time for that at all. Because we don't have any control over what happens, and we have to figure out who does and try to shift them or try to find other people who are willing to do the job. So again, a large part of why we're here is because Donald Trump still has enormous amounts of power, and he's a fucking idiot. And he, too, is a misanthrope, but he is surrounded by a party full of people who hate people just as much as he does. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody, welcome to tonight's episode of Mary Trump Live. It is wonderful to be here with you after what was a quite challenging day yet again, day ending in Y and all. So we were treated to yet another cabinet meeting, which is really just an opportunity to watch a bunch of grown men debase themselves in order to kiss Donald's feet. And because Donald clearly doesn't get enough attention, there was also a press conference. Donald met with the cabinet just a day after announcing a 90-day pause in his trade war involving over 75 countries. Despite the pause, he still continued to uphold a 10% tariff on most global imports, which is ill-advised. And he significantly increased tariffs on Chinese products, raising them by 125% on top of an existing 20%, bringing the total to 145%, which is quite frankly insane. He said, quote, "There will be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing," unquote. There are a few things more offensive to me than listening to a person who doesn't understand what the word beautiful is. Use it. As Donald took questions, he seemed completely unaware that all of the gains made in yesterday's stock market rally are now mostly gone. Take a look at this.
Prescription drug prices are even to down. We're doing very well. It's been amazing. We had a big day yesterday. There'll always be transition difficulty, but we had in history, it was the biggest day in history, the markets. So we're very, very happy with the way the country is running.
I mean, I know the guy isn't capable of holding a bottle of water properly, but somebody get him some water because he's so thirsty. Anyway, Robert Kennedy was there today too. Oh joy! I mean, at least maybe if he's busy in a cabinet meeting kissing Donald's ass, he's too busy to go kill children with preventable communicable diseases. Kennedy came to talk about his his latest efforts to remove fluoride from America's water systems and give children more cavities, more infections, and more problems with their brains. We didn't alter his voice, so be forewarned and watch.
I'm working with Lee Zeldin to reassess the fluoride rules based upon the August release by the National Toxicity Program of new science that shows a direct inverse correlation between exposure to fluoride and IQ loss, particularly in children. Lee and I were in Utah this week, to announce that Utah became the first state in the country to ban supplemental fluoride. I'm working with Brooke on and governors now in 24 states who are advancing MAHA legislation.
First of all, whenever you start a sentence with "I've been working with Lee Zeldin," you're definitely going in the wrong direction. Also, I forgot to point out, whenever I play these clips, check out what's happening in the stock market ticker in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. I find it, well, I shouldn't be mystified by anything anymore. However, yes, excessive amounts of fluoride can cause problems. But when I say excessive, I mean extraordinarily excessive. Like the amounts of fluoride that are not found in drinking water or in toothpaste. So he's yet again basing a policy recommendation that will get children hurt and potentially killed on a myth, just as he does with vaccines and the fallacious connection to autism. Again, unfluoridated water, and we've seen this happen in towns where they have banned the use of fluoride in water, one in particular in Canada, leads, as I said earlier, to more cavities. And eventually, if the cavities get untreated, could lead to brain infections, which I don't know, as a parent, is something I don't want for my child. Anyway, it was also announced that Donald's regime is intensifying its crackdown on elite United States universities. In just over a month, billions of dollars in federal funding have been suspended or placed under review. Institutions facing scrutiny include Cornell, Northwestern, Brown, Columbia, the University of Pennsylvania, Princeton, and Harvard. Donald spoke to Department of Education Secretary. Wait, we still have one of those? Oh, it's so weird. I thought we weren't supposed to have that anymore. So anyway, Linda McMahon, who's running an agency that kind of doesn't exist anymore, he spoke to this totally well-informed person who thinks that AI is pronounced A1, like the steak sauce, on what's new in the war against America's educational system. Let's watch.
Imagine the money we pay Harvard. They have a $60 billion fund and we're giving them $8 billion. And we're trying to figure that out. And then they hire de Blasio, the worst mayor in the history of New York. And they hired the woman from Chicago who was a disaster, total disaster. And they pay them massive salaries. And they're supposed to be teaching you government. That's not Harvard. That's not Harvard the way it used to be. So do you have anything to say about that? The dollars you're holding back from quite a few universities that were not behaving.
Yeah, and the other, there's some Princeton, Cornell, others that are coming in, and actually getting calls now from the presidents of the universities who really do want to come in and sit down and have discussions. And so we're investigating them, but in the meantime, we're holding back the grant and the fund money.
Okay. Great job.
What exactly are you investigating? Free thought? Also, Donald, what do you know about what Harvard used to be? You couldn't have gotten into Harvard if your life depended on it. The only reason you got into the University of Pennsylvania, which, by the way, no disrespect intended to the University of Pennsylvania today, which is legitimately an Ivy League university, back in the 50s, 60s, sorry, it was subpar. And the only reason you got in, you moron, is because your sister Marianne did your homework for you. You paid somebody to take your fucking SATs, and your older brother Freddie had a fraternity brother in the admissions department of the University of Pennsylvania, and he did you a solid. That's the only reason you got in. You couldn't get near Harvard University with a 39.5-foot pole back in the 60s. So the other thing I need to point out, although it's so obvious by now, everything for this cretin comes down to money. He understands, he doesn't even understand money, but he certainly doesn't understand anything else. And it is grotesque. Federal prosecutors are dropping criminal charges against Henry Santos, a man once labeled by the administration as the East Coast leader of MS-13. Instead of pursuing the case, the Justice Department now plans to deport him. Oh, that's interesting. This is according to the Associated Press, which I'm shocked is allowed to report on anything anymore, because if you'll remember, they have the audacity to continue calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico. In a rare twist, the attorney is opposing the dismissal, arguing that it could fast track his client's deportation without due process and result in his being sent to that notorious prison in El Salvador. But White House Press Secretary Ava Braun, my apologies, Caroline Leavitt, explained to Fox State Television today that the administration doesn't really need to present evidence. Just trust them. They are, after all so incredibly trustworthy. They're now do things a little differently. Watch this.
Can you shed some light on this? Because it was a story that we all covered, that he was the East Coast leader of MS-13. So what was the evidence that supported that proclamation by the Department of Justice and the FBI?
Here at the White House, we applaud the Attorney General Pam Bondi, our FBI Director Kash Patel, for working hand in hand with local law enforcement on the ground in the Commonwealth of Virginia to detain and arrest this MS-13 ringleader. There was sufficient evidence to do so, and now the case is in the hands of the Department of Homeland Security, who will be deporting this individual from our country.
Some clarity on it, Caroline, because, if indeed he is what we were told he is, the East Coast leader of MS-13, wouldn't it make sense to prosecute him for crimes related to that? I know he was held on a gun charge, but to make sure that any victims of MS-13 through his leadership get their day in court here in the United States, and then send him to an El Salvadoran prison if he is deported and found guilty on those crimes.
Well, again, this administration is doing things differently, Martha.
Yes. This administration is doing things differently, which is to say illegally, unconstitutionally, and every single person in that cabinet meeting, including this press secretary, is complicit in the Trump regime's agenda of tearing down democracy and replacing it with something that most of us probably don't want. A fascistic authoritarian regime in which we are heading towards a point where none of us is going to have rights anymore. If we think it's okay, and many of the people who voted for Donald Trump actually do think this, to take away the due process rights of anybody, even if it's an alleged criminal who may not be here legally, even if it's somebody who has brown skin, that's a slippery slope that we are sliding down so quickly, I don't even think we're on the slope anymore. I noticed that Marco Rubio, the little guy, had his head down the whole time, and I wondered if he was praying, and then I realized, well, that would be ill-advised, because if he did, I would assume that a lightning bolt would strike him. This is all performative. Nothing of substance. Nothing of substance is discussed in these cabinet meetings. They are basically opportunities for Donald Trump to show just how powerful he is. Because, again, these grown-ass adults just sit there and let him spout his nonsense, let him tell his lies. They do not challenge him. And instead of speaking substantively to the American people about what they're supposed to be doing to help make our lives better, instead, they spend their time talking about how great and brilliant and magnificent Donald Trump is. Which, if you can say that with a straight face, I worry for you. Either that or you're just a sociopath. Anyway, Clearly, they are, as I said at the beginning, they're all on the same page here, and they're all getting something out of this. I don't quite know precisely what it is, but we may find out someday, and it's not going to be pretty. What I will say before I move on is this. If every single Republican banded together, it would take no courage at all for them to do the right thing because they have the numbers. There is power in numbers. So again, this isn't about a lack of courage. This isn't about their cowardice. This is about the fact that they're getting something out of this. And one of the things they're getting out of it is fascism. While the Trump regime tries to quell fears about the disastrous economy, thank you, Donald, the markets really don't care about Donald's spin. The U.S. markets today continue to plunge after the temporary 90-day pause on some tariffs announced yesterday by Donald unexpectedly and contrary to everything he had said prior. Here's a visual aid provided by CBS News Money Watch with a recap.
The markets closing moments ago as stocks erased much of the gains from yesterday's historic rally. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map. This is brought to you by FinViz. It is showing the top 500 stocks in real time. Red indicating the stock is down. Green means it's up, and the size of the box represents market cap.
I don't honestly, I'm not, am I colorblind? Because the only color I saw was red. I'm going to have to get that checked out. That's bad. Also, by the way, Donald, I know you're listening. If there's a historic day of growth in the stock market and it's basically erased the next day, it doesn't really count. Also, by the way, yeah, there was a lot of, the market basically acted like a rocket yesterday. However, even though there's this massive, massive gain, all of the losses of the last few days and couple of months were not erased. So it's not like everything was just fine. And I'll talk about some of the other variables in a second. But today, the numbers at the end of the day tell the story. The Nasdaq dropped 4.3% in a sharp market sell-off. The S&P 500 fell 3.5%, and the Dow declined 2.5%, signaling deep investor anxiety over the ongoing tariff chaos. Despite the pause, the U.S. average effective tax rate is climbing to 25.3%. This is the highest since 1903. Donald's policy includes a baseline 10% tariff on all imports, and as I mentioned earlier, an utterly staggering, unbelievable, and just mad 145% on Chinese goods, alongside upcoming sectoral tariffs on items like lumber and pharmaceuticals. Analysts from Citi and Moody's predict slower growth, rising inflation, and a likely return to interest rate cuts. Moody's chief economist, Mark Zandi, estimates a 60% chance of recession in 2025. Just for context, that was about 25% 2 weeks ago. And the reason for this is erratic improvised trade policy is a major economic drag. Yeah, no kidding. Fed officials, including Neil Kashkari and Tom Barkin, warned that Donald's trade uncertainty is chilling investment in consumer spending, potentially tipping the U.S. into a recession due to lost confidence and rising input costs. While Donald claimed the tariff pause was to address high government borrowing costs, those costs remained elevated post-pause. Officials now admit the pause was a tactic to buy time. I think it was also a tactic to buy cheap stocks, but what do I know? Reinforcing concerns that the regime's trade policy is completely improvised. Well, yes, it is completely improvised, but to the point, I apologize. I keep saying tax rate. I meant tariff rate. Just wait until we see what happens with taxes. That's going to be fun. But I think it's worth pointing out that the reason the 90-day pause didn't work is, yes, in part because there are still significant tariffs across the board, especially in China. But in one day, you cannot erase the chaos, uncertainty, and idiocy Donald Trump unleashed upon the global economy. There is no reason for our trading partners to trust us anymore. That doesn't get rebuilt because we had one good day in the market. The day started very badly, by the way. So that's a factor. Plus, of course, Donald Trump is still in charge. There are no adults in the room here. He's going to keep doing this, and it's going to keep getting worse. So there is literally no reason to think that confidence has been restored because, quite frankly, when it comes to America, there is literally no reason for the world to have any confidence in this country about anything. The consequences of Donald's market games are starting to catch up to him. Okay, we'll see. But at least Democratic Senators Adam Schiff and Ruben Gallego sent what is that thing called? A letter demanding an investigation into whether White House officials or Donald's family members, not me, participated in insider trading. They requested financial records and communications from executive officials. The Stock Act of 2012 prohibits executive branch employees from engaging in insider trading. I cannot believe it took them until 2012 to make that happen. Legal experts note that it would be relatively straightforward to identify potential violations simply by reviewing trading records tied to the timing of Donald's announcement. While White House officials claimed the tariff decision was premeditated, Donald later told reporters he made the decision spontaneously on the morning of April 9th. His conflicting account raised further ethical and legal concerns. Now, obviously, Donald exhaling. If you're Donald Trump and you're exhaling, that raises ethical and legal concerns. He's a walking ethical and legal concern. But what's the truth here? I mean, it seems self-evident on its face to me, but we need proof. Senators Warren and Durbin also emphasized the need for an independent investigation to determine if there was self-dealing by Donald, his family, or White House officials. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez similarly expressed her concerns on the steps of Capitol Hill this morning.
I'm very curious as to some of the discussions that were happening at the NRCC dinner, the Trump speech the night before this tariff announcement. I'm very interested in the May 15th disclosure deadline for members of Congress and what members of Congress, Republican or Democrat, were trading the day before and the morning of the tariff announcement. And I'm very interested in tracking some of the communications and who was communicating with whom in the 48 hours preceding.
What should the next step be, do you think?
Pardon?
What should the next step be, do you think?
Well, there are a couple of next steps. The most obvious and clear next step, I believe, is moving to the floor the insider trading ban for members of Congress. Now, of course, that is challenging to do when many of the people who would be subject to that bill would be voting on it. Personally, I think anyone who is actively engaged in trading individual stocks should not vote on those bills at all. I believe that they have a conflict of interest, and so they should exempt themselves from such a vote.
Personally, I think if you have the honor and privilege of serving in the United States Congress, every investment you have should be in a blind trust until you're a private citizen again. I am so sick of this shit. I can't even tell you. So yeah, we need to get to the bottom of this. Will it matter? Who knows? But people need to understand what's going on here. This government, such as it is a scam. The entire executive branch is there to serve two purposes and two purposes only: to make Donald Trump feel better about what a loser he is, and to fleece the American people and enrich themselves. That's it. I mean, as far as I can tell. Speaking of which, after weeks of Republican fighting and Donald's failing to control his own party, a budget bill has finally been passed, which is bad news. The infighting came from House conservatives wanting to limit government spending further and advocating for tax reforms for the rich. I don't like calling them conservatives. The far right, what do they call themselves? Economy hawks, I think they call themselves, threatened a government shutdown back in March and have been the holdouts on voting on the current legislation. This is part of the GOP's ongoing power struggle to unify on fiscal hawks, that's what they are, to unify on fiscal policy between Donald, the House, and the Senate. And then here he goes using that word that should never come out of his mouth again. He called this a big, beautiful budget, but, the deficit/fiscal hawks seem to disagree. It seems that Donald may be losing his grip on his party when it comes to his former staunchly loyal House members who are the far right of this issue. and perhaps with Republican politicians in general. So now it's going to be up to the Senate, where lawmakers are likely to challenge the bill's provisions. But I don't know. I mean, we're talking about Republicans here. We're talking about a bunch of people who have abdicated all of their constitutional duties and handed them over to Donald Trump. So I'm fairly certain. I mean, it may not be completely straightforward, but I'm fairly certain that this bill will get done and this budget will be disastrous. These budget discussions have very serious implications. And we're now seeing play out in a way that has to do with the recent measles outbreak, which I've talked about because it makes my head explode. Measles are on the rise. Vaccine, and while that's happening, vaccine clinics are being forced to close their doors in the wake of federal budget cuts, and that would be thanks to Donald and his sociopath of a Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert Kennedy, and every single Republican senator who voted to confirm him to that position. In March, the Centers for Disease Control cut $11.4 billion in COVID-related funding for state and local health programs, halting vaccine clinics nationwide. By the way, for those of you who may not be aware, COVID is still a thing. This move has disrupted crucial immunization efforts, including the closing of clinics in Arizona, Nevada, and other states, just as measles cases continue to rise. Public health experts, including former U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams, warn the cuts will have long-term consequences, particularly for vulnerable populations, which would be mostly children. Clinics are scrambling to maintain services, but many are facing severe staff shortages and funding shortfalls, with more than 500 measles cases in Texas alone, where there have been 3 deaths, 2 of them children. The cuts come at a time when vaccine access is desperately needed, and so too, I should add, is education about vaccines. Despite a temporary court block on the funding cuts in some states, officials say the damage is already done. Awesome. This comes on the heels of, as I mentioned, the 3 total deaths, which were in one county in Texas, Gaines County, which is the epicenter of the measles outbreak. Why? It's because the vaccine rate across the country is supposed to be 95% in order to keep infections where they need to be, which is to say, very infrequent and deaths to be almost unheard of. We have 3 deaths for the first time in 10 years. In Gaines County, among kindergartners, the vaccination rate is 82%, which is obscene. This outbreak is believed to have spread to Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, and Mexico, all while Robert Kennedy, the aforementioned sociopath, refuses to endorse vaccines universally. A measles outbreak, incompetent health leaders, sociopaths like Donald, and the closing of vaccine clinics pretty much seems like a recipe for disaster to me, and completely preventable unnecessary death, but that seems to be something that Donald specializes in. Today, Kennedy also announced a sweeping research initiative, to determine the cause of autism by September. Once again, reviving debunked claims that vaccines may be linked to autism incidents. That myth has been debunked by so many peer-reviewed articles, I have lost count. And here we are, making it harder for Americans to get vaccinated while spending God knows how much of our taxpayer dollars trying to disprove something, or prove it perhaps, that has already been disproven. Kennedy has hired David Geer, an anti-vaccine advocate who has pushed vaccine autism links for years, to lead the project. Gee, I wonder how that's going to end up. Geer previously lost his medical license in Maryland for illegally practicing medicine on a child. Great. And has been widely discredited in the medical community. The effort, which Kennedy says will involve hundreds of scientists, has not included major autism advocacy organizations. Quote, There's a deep concern that we are going backward and evaluating debunked theories. That's Kristen Roth, who's a spokesperson for the Autism Society of America. Roth confirmed that the ASA, her organization, has not been consulted about Kennedy's research. While autism rates have risen, experts attribute this to broader diagnostic criteria, yes, earlier detection, yes, and increased awareness, yes, not vaccines. But while the measles outbreak continues, Republicans in the House turned their focus to voter disenfranchisement because, of course, they do. This, again, has been one of the things they've been gunning for years. Although this has taken a bit of a turn. I mean, we've known about this for a while, but it's still kind of, it shouldn't shock me, I know, but it's so blatant. This is the act that they're trying to pass, is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, with the awesome acronym SAVE, which would require in-person proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. This passed in the House today. The bill was inspired by a recent executive order, which was 220-208, with 4 Democrats joining all present Republicans in support. I want to know who those are so we can primary them. The legislation was sponsored by Representative Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, and it would also mandate states to purge non-citizens from voter rolls and allow lawsuits against officials who failed to enforce the law. While Republicans framed it as a necessary step to, quote, maintain election integrity, unquote, critics, including Representative Joe Morell, a Democrat of New York, warned it could disenfranchise millions, especially women, people of color, and military voters. Yes, in other words, it is going to do exactly what it's intended to do. Federal law already bars non-citizens from voting. It does indeed. And existing registration includes signing under penalty of perjury. I think it's worth just taking a second to mention that voter fraud, which is what Republicans have been pushing for decades as a way to justify their making it harder and harder and harder for people in certain demographics to vote in this country, is almost non-existent. Voter fraud is a myth. What's true is gerrymandering and the kinds of tricks Republicans pull to disenfranchise people in this country. I think the last time I checked, this was the statistic. The incidence of voter fraud is so vanishingly small that there was one case in the last 1 billion votes cast in America. That is what they call a solution in search of a problem. Courts have previously blocked similar state-level laws requiring documentary proof of citizenship, but of course now the bill is moving to the Senate, where it faces an uphill climb, but with senators like Mike Lee of Utah, I don't know. Lee has introduced a companion bill with 20 GOP co-sponsors, but 60 votes would be required to overcome a filibuster. I mean, we'll see. Again, there are a bunch of misogynists and racists and misanthropes. So I think passing legislation like this would all but guarantee they have a lock on any election in the future. Because, I mean, I think what's worth pointing out is that your the name on your voter registration has to match the name of your birth certificate. So if you're a woman who changed your name when you got married, oh, well, what are you going to do? The attack on non-citizens continues, of course. The Trump regime has continued attempting to deport Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian rights activist and Columbia University student, citing his ties to Hamas. The Trump regime was ordered by a judge to produce its evidence against Khalil before a hearing Friday on whether it can continue detaining him during immigration proceedings. Donald has provided absolutely no evidence of this assertion until now, and their feeble attempt at quote-unquote evidence is utterly laughable. The so-called evidence is a 2-page letter from Secretary of State Marco Rubio linking Khalil's protest to anti-Semitic actions, which last I checked are not cause for deportation. The government's case relies heavily on Rubio's assertions with no further evidence provided. Because again, these guys are so trustworthy. Khalil's lawyers argue that the deportation is based on his First Amendment rights and not legitimate foreign policy concerns. Yes, and that is assuming there is still a First Amendment right to free speech. And I'm beginning to think that the only people allowed to be anti-Semitic in this country are the Republicans. The judge is set to make a ruling as early as tomorrow. What's the rush? Mr. Khalil his life has been held in limbo for, I don't know, 2 weeks now? I can only imagine the hell that he and his family are going through. But, justice grinds slow but fun. This is one of the moves being made by Donald towards immigrants. Okay, this is tricky. The Trump regime is using the Social Security Administration's quote unquote death master file to label certain living immigrants as deceased, effectively cutting them off from bank accounts, credit cards, jobs, and federal benefits. This tactic is part of a broader effort to pressure migrants with revoked legal status, many of whom entered lawfully under Biden-era programs, to self-deport. They just need a little incentive. The file was originally intended to stop benefits to deceased individuals, but is now being repurposed to, quote, terminate the financial lives, unquote, of migrants flagged as convicted criminals or suspected terrorists or, brown people, because that seems to be the only criterion that is operative across the board. The list includes minors and people with no criminal records, raising concerns about errors and abuse. Past mistakes in the death file have caused major disruptions in people's lives. Former Social Security Administrator Commissioner Martin O'Malley called the move financial murder. Yes, that is my preferred designation, because let us not use euphemisms anymore. Elon Musk's Doge team reportedly drove the policy, pushing extreme anti-immigrant theories and linking Social Security data with ICE surveillance systems, which is its own kind of death warrant. Legal experts warn the plan may violate federal privacy laws, especially since it includes sharing last known addresses of nearly 100,000 people with DHS and ICE, two of the least trustworthy organizations in this country right now, which is really saying something. The administration renamed the death list the ineligible master file, but still assigns fake dates of death to people removed from parole protections. So while Donald is using everything in his power to fight non-citizens, he's got a battle of his own brewing in court. A judge just ruled that Donald will be facing a defamation lawsuit filed by the exonerated five over comments he made about them last year during his debate with Kamala Harris. Sorry, I thought that was a clip. It was not. I have to say, this is a long time coming. This was back in the, well, let me sum it up this way. This lawsuit argues that Donald's repeated public statements falsely accusing the men, now men, of involvement in a 1989 rape case is defamation. Even years after the now exonerated five case was resolved, Donald has been making comments accusing them of being guilty. The lawsuit against Donald asked for an unspecified amount of damages, but the exonerated five previously received a settlement of $41 million from New York City after filing a civil lawsuit, to which I have to say that is not enough, given what these boys went through. I was living in Boston at the time, so I didn't really understand, this is before the internet and before cell phones and stuff like that. So I wasn't really plugged into what was happening. I didn't learn until after, fairly long after what had happened. But Donald's behavior during this absolutely horrific and unforgivable chapter in New York history was grotesque, to say the least. The racism, the viciousness of what he did. He spent huge sums of money taking out full-page ads in every single major New York publication, including the New York Times, to call for the death penalty for these innocent boys who had done nothing wrong but be black in the wrong place at the wrong time. To say that it was despicable is an understatement, because I don't have the words to describe just how horrific it was. What these boys and then men suffered is unspeakable. $41 million from New York City, bullshit. They each should get 10 times that from Donald Trump. And I hope they do. Okay. Ready? Are we ready for our emotional support moment today? I like turtles. And the green sea turtle, which is also known as the green turtle, which is, tricky. Also known as the black sea turtle. Make up your minds. It's like looking at that red sea of tanking stocks and having to spot the green squares. Are they green or are they black? Pick one. Maybe it depends on how much sunlight there is in the water. I don't know. But they're basically a species of large sea turtles, and their range extends throughout tropical and subtropical. I can't say that word for some reason. Tropical and subtropical seas around the world. And there are two distinct populations, one in the Atlantic and one in the Pacific, but it's also found in the Indian Ocean. The ones we're about to watch were found in one of my favorite places on the planet, Hawaii. So check it out. Yeah. I know this makes absolutely no sense. But the one that was kind of chilling out on the sand with his or her or their whatever head up reminded me of my cat, Cap. It's an attitudinal thing. Be patient with me. All right, let us get to your comments and questions. All right, ready? Just me. Thank you as always. Late bloomer fee. Hashtag making up for lost time. That's awesome. We have so many fees now that I don't know. I might have to I'm worried about the IRS coming after our fees. We have a fee for everything. I like the late bloomer fee though. Of five, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's either Sarge or 5Arge Tech. Not sure, but cool. And thank you so much. Comment, we love what you're doing, Fee. That's great. I love that you did that. Donna, thank you so much. Parking fee. See? I think we're on a roll. Just me again. Australia is really in the house. Comment, woke up laughing, having dreamt about quips to send in. Stay tuned. We will. And we will not forget. If you forget, there will be a fee. Donna, thank you again. Comment, I wish Donald goes away soon fee. Yeah. That I heartily concur. Okay, just me. Thank you so much. But honestly, you don't have to do that every time you want to put up a comment. I mean, we really, really, really appreciate it. But in all sincerity, it's not necessary. Unless it's a fee for something, like forgetting your quips, in which case, yes, it's completely justified. All right, comment. Holy mango froyo, Batman. Really? I'm going to have to pay a fee because I'm not comfortable saying that. But thank you. Oh, you guys. All right. Becky, thank you. That's fantastic. Really appreciate it. Comment. Happy Thursday. It's Thursday. Hallelujah. Thanks for keeping us sane. You're welcome. We listen to you every day. You and your team are awesome. My team is awesome. They really are. And I appreciate them. And I really appreciate it that you guys do, because you should, quite frankly. So thank you again, Becky. I really appreciate that as well. Beans, thank you very, very much. Comment / question. Actually, it's a question. Mary, have you noticed the painted on smile all these spokespeople for Donald have? It reminds me of televangelists. Are they coached to smile like that? No, they're just dead inside. That's the easiest explanation. They are empty husks of human beings who have no real human feeling that matters. Same thing for televangelists. Invisible Pink Unicorn 762. Thank you very much. Comment, Ava Braun. That's awesome. Love it. Yeah, I mean, except I don't love the fact that she is like channeling Ava Braun. That's kind of disturbing, but here we are. Andrew, thank you very much, Andrew. NEH comment, NEH grants were stolen with a fake email. Just FYI. Yeah, that would be National Endowment for the Humanities grants. Is anybody surprised? I have never met anybody with more contempt for not just humanity, but the humanities than Donald and the execrable excuses for human beings with which he surrounds himself. Donna, again, thank you. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mary. Question. How much money is enough money for the people who are special kind of stupid in this administration? I believe in helping people, not hurting them, everyone, regardless of what color, who you love, or what religion you believe in. Well, the simple answer to that question is there is not enough money. And because our system is based upon the acquisition of wealth and the necessity for money, we've sort of set ourselves up. Like these people have serious addiction problems in my view. But if you look at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, there are addictions for everything. Eating, shopping, substances, et cetera, but last I checked, which isn't that recently, but still, I don't think there's a diagnosis for addiction to acquiring wealth. And these people are really sick because it's more important to them than anything else. And they will destroy people to acquire more wealth. We're seeing this play out in real time. So instead of treating them like they have an illness, which they do, we treat them like they're heroes. We treat them like they're geniuses. We treat them like they're better than everybody else, and they think they're better than everybody else too. I know this. I grew up in a family full of such people, and they are so incredibly damaged. They don't have the foggiest idea what they're doing, why they're doing it, or what they're missing. Purpley One, thank you so very much, Purpley One, as always. Comment, love you, Mary, and all your team members. Yes, my team members totally rock. So thank you. Regina, thank you very much. That's great. Question. How do they explain non-vaccinated kids who have autism? They don't. They don't. People like Kennedy, they stick to their preferred narrative and they ignore all contradictory evidence. That's how they operate. And will continue to operate. CBB, thank you very much. It's very generous of you. Comment. Oh, that's very kind. Thank you for your leadership. And TLC, you're welcome. It is a privilege to be able to do this. AJ Vintage, thank you very much. That's great. Amazing. Comment on January 20th. Sorry, question. On January 20th, an executive order was signed saying that the Insurrectionists Act will be invoked on April 20th, causing martial law. No. Mm-mm. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, basically. My dear Cheryl, thank you. Late fee paid. You didn't have to pay a late fee, but we appreciate it anyway. Guys, I think we have some breaking news, but I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and we will let you know as soon as we've confirmed that. Law nerd, Debbie, thank you very much, Debbie. Comment, thank you for the emotional support animals, Mary. Yeah, no kidding. They're just so awesome. They absolutely help tremendously. Yeah, it looks like we have breaking news. So let's see what's going on. All right. Okay, well, this is actually good news, which I didn't think was possible coming from the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court. But breaking news, the Supreme Court will require the Trump regime to, quote unquote, facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Once again, the Supreme Court will require the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Just as a reminder, he is here legally. He was taken illegally. He is a father. He lives in Maryland. He has done everything he needed to do in order to be allowed to stay here. And the administration even admitted that they had taken him erroneously, but they didn't care. And they weren't going to do anything about it. They went so far as to say, hey, he's not in this country anymore. By the way, he's from El Salvador. He came here because he was afraid for his life. And a judge said, regardless of what this person allegedly did, sending him back to El Salvador would almost certainly result in his being tortured or killed. They sent him back there anyway to a notorious prison that has horrific, inhumane conditions. And they basically, when a judge ordered them to bring him back, they were like, it's out of our hands. He's not in the country anymore. We don't have any jurisdiction, and neither does the judge, which is, of course, complete and utter bullshit. All right, let us continue. Again, good news. But now the next step, who's going to enforce this? All right. Daniel, a turtle fee. I like that. I mean, again, it's unnecessary, but I really like it. Is it a green turtle or a black? It's a green turtle because turtles are generally speaking green. Thank you, Daniel. That's great. Chic Bates, thank you very much. Turtles are greater than turmoil, always. Yeah, they're just like so chill. It's hard for me to imagine a turtle getting angry or heated about anything. Lee, thank you very much. Yeah. Comment, we hate your uncle's tie fee. Yep. That would bankrupt me. Well, there are other fees about him that would probably bankrupt me more. Cheryl, Canadian in the house. You guys rock. Fee to Canada when you wanna. Yeah, well, gotta keep that in my back pocket. Thank you, Cheryl. Left of way, thank you very much. Question, Mary, how can we end this national nightmare? Well, you're not going to like my answer, really. Right now, all we really, I mean, one, we need to take care of ourselves. That doesn't have anything to do with ending the national nightmare, though. But we do need to take care of ourselves because this fight is not going to be over anytime soon. But one of the most important things we can do right now is bear witness and make sure we stay in this until it's time for us to be in a position to end this national nightmare. So, it's organizing, protesting, and I've said this before, shutting it all down. Okay, we got somebody from Substack, Dave here. Question: are the Dems who voted Reps Ed Case of Hawaii? No. Okay. I hang on one second. Sorry, guys. I'm thirsty. Okay, this is not a question. My apologies. Okay. It's a list of the Democrats who voted with the Republicans. Thank you very much. In other words, they betrayed us. And these are the people who need to be primaried as soon as possible. Ed Case of Hawaii, Henry Cuellar of Texas, there's a shocker, Jared Golden of Maine, Marie Glusenkamp Perez of Washington happily sided with Republicans. Yes, they did. And let us not forget it. Thank you for that information. I really appreciate it. It's good to know. No. I jumped the gun there, but Kevin, super sticker, thank you very, very much. All right, got some people to thank. From New Zealand, 6 Cents Amelia, thank you as always. That's great. Cindy, thank you as always. Another super sticker. Vicky, thank you very much. LH, thank you. Awesome. Gloria, thank you very much for that. Cindy, another super sticker. Thank you, Cindy. Excellent. And Dawn, another super sticker. Thank you very much, Dawn. Okay, cool. I think that does it for us. So I just want to check something really quickly. Okay, so just one more thing from the Supreme Court, which is very, very heartening. But again, we'll see how this gets enforced. The Supreme Court just ruled Garcia must be returned. Okay, that is unequivocal. So let's see what the fascists do with that order. I'm not sanguine, but I am actually quite relieved that this corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court did the right thing in this instance, because if they had not, we would be having a very, very different conversation. Okay, guys, thank you for hanging in there. It was another one of those days, and I know it was a lot, but hey, we had turtles at the end. Just a quick programming note about tomorrow. There will be no live. I have a previous obligation. But, things happen. I will be here every night next week and for the foreseeable future. So thank you for understanding. Thank you, everybody watching on YouTube, the handful of you who are watching on Twitter, my awesome Substackers who are live streaming over there. If you guys who don't know, I have a Substack called The Good in Us. Please check it out. It is free to subscribe. Like-minded community. Lots of commenting going on over there. And of course, everybody listening to the podcast. Our phenomenal moderators who do such an incredible job. Everybody, all of our super stickers, everybody giving us gifts. It means so much to us. We are closing in on 370,000 subscribers, which is really, really important. So yeah, your support is crucial. Also, other ways to do that. Just like and share our videos. That helps us tremendously with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The more subscribers have, the more momentum we're going to get. And please pass the word along for that. And don't forget, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop saying what I was going to say because I can't remember what it was. Because it's Thursday and tomorrow's Friday. Maybe that's it. There's one more group of people I need to thank. Who could they possibly be? My extraordinary team. Again, I say this, and I know it probably just sounds like I'm just saying it, but it happens to be true. These guys do work that would blow your mind. And they sift through so much news and really just make sure that you guys get the essence of what is most important. And there's so much going on, and they make me sound coherent, right? It's incredible. So thank you guys, as always. Right. I think that does it for us. It is 7:05 p.m. on Thursday. I will not see you tomorrow for the live. However, there are videos dropping all day long. So please, again, when you subscribe, click on that bell icon because you'll be alerted every time new episodes and videos drop. So that's sort of the most efficient way to know what's coming. I made a video earlier. We made a lot of videos today, actually. So one obviously about what's happening with the market, and I did a couple that are coming out about just giving some background family history to help understand like where we are in terms of this insanity, why we're here. I think we're able to do deeper dives of those pre-recorded videos. So check those out as well. And the next time I see you will be Sunday evening for Ask Mary Anything Within Reason, which I'm very much looking forward to. So in the meantime, and don't forget, we've got a new episode of Trump Trolls Trump dropping on Saturday, which is actually a really fun thing to do. That's it. Have a good night off. I'm going to have a very long night ahead of me, but that's okay. And I will see you guys Sunday. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe and be kind.